Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside the Issues, sponsored by the Legal and Voters Richfield. My name is MAUREEN SCAGLIA and I am the moderator of the program. Tonight I'm very pleased to have with me Karen Shragg, who's the manager, director, chief of the Woodlake Nature Center in Richfield. And in my mind, and I think many Richfield residents would agree, it's really the crown jewel of our city. It's a wonderful nature center. Welcome to the program, Karen.
Thank you.
Woodlake Nature Center came about with a piece of land that was once a lake, and by, what was it, about the 60s, was not so much a lake anymore. And they had to decide what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit on how it happened?
Well, of course, that's way before my time.
Yes, we understand.
We opened the doors on 71.
Yeah.
And 69 was when all the controversy happened. Basically, you had a lake bottom that had, through the process of a lot of development, there was a spring. It was a spring-fed lake at one time, but when Lyndale Avenue went in, it cut off the spring, so it was no longer spring-fed. And then when 494 and 35W went in, it no longer had a viable bottom, so it drained out. And then we had this, kind of marsh. So what the city wanted to do is buy up parcels of land to make enough of a property to do something with. And so there was three things that they were thinking about. They were thinking about a nature center, which was a brand new idea at the time. This is before the first Earth Day in 1969 when the city council was deciding that. And it could have been a golf course, but it was a bit wet and also a little bit not enough land.
So good.
Or it was going to be the site of Normandale College. And so there was a pretty big fight, as politics go, on what it was going to be. And Les Blacklock, if you remember, the nature photographer,
Yes.
who lived in Eden Prairie at the time, came and surveyed the land and was one of the key people. There were many key people that really saw the potential of the Nature Center as something other than a college or something that could be built elsewhere. It had a lot of biodiversity, it had a lot of trees at the time, and I'm glad because I wouldn't I wouldn't be here if they didn't make that decision.
Well, that was kind of a close call. Now, I find it interesting. I did not know that it originally was a spring-fed area.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to that water? I mean, when you plugged the spring, essentially, is what happened?
No, you cut off the spring, and the spring kind of meanders elsewhere. It just no longer feeds the lake. Okay. And then, if you think it was a perched lake, so essentially, it would be like a bathtub that you pull the drain out, and it no longer fills. It was never a very deep lake. It was only about 30 feet deep. Okay. And now we have about 28 feet of mud, is basically a marsh. But a marsh is far more biodiverse than a lake. And that supports a lot more wildlife. Wetlands, this is technically a cattail marsh wetland. It's not a fen, it's not some of the other types of wetlands, but it is one of the most biodiverse per square feet in the world besides a rainforest. There's just a lot of life there.
Yeah,
because of the water, because of the plants and so on.
Yeah, it's a combo of land and water. So where does the water come from?
The water comes from 22 intake pipes that come in their storm. It's actually, it depends where I want money, because it's a stormwater holding pond or it's a marsh, depending. If there's funding for that, well, whether it's a stormwater. No, there are 22 pipes that come in and drain most of Richfield. So the watershed goes from Augsburg Park to Grass Lake to Shops on Lyndale all the way to Southdale. So it's a big watershed. And when Shops on Lyndale was built over on 494 in Lyndale, we got a 108-inch stormwater pipe that drained the water. Every time you have a development, you have to have a way to get rid of water from runoff. And Woodlake is the recipient of all that runoff. So that feeds it. So we can have what's called a bounce, which means if an inch of rain comes and you have a yard in Richfield, it gets an inch of rain. Woodlake could get up to 12 inches of water because of the bounce effect of all those pipes coming in. Now, when we redredged the marsh in between 1996 and 1998, we got an outlet, meaning we have a way to get rid of water, which is a pipe that's pumped up into the system of underground pipes that go down the 494 corridor, end up in the Minnesota River, ends up in the Mississippi River, and then down into New Orleans.
So we really have what some other cities have been trying to build. I mean, we've got a stormwater holding pond. If it gets too full, we pump it, but for most events, the water sits there and then filters down. So, I mean, we are carrying with the intake some of the pollutants and stuff from the runoff. But it's a filtering thing, and it's able to kind of clean it up, and the wildlife seems to be able to do okay.
And we worked into some of our curriculum, especially with the 6th grade and 7th grade curriculum. We've worked in the water testing. So we do test for heavy metals. We do test for phosphates, nitrates. We do invertebrate tests just to keep track of how the quality is doing.
And how's it doing?
It's been doing pretty well. And it depends. Like right after we dredged the marsh, we had a great difference. We just could see a great difference between, we had deeper waters, we had more plants, therefore we had more invertebrates. And there are some indicator species that we look for. One is called Daphne. It's almost microscopic, very tiny. But that particular invertebrate cannot live in a very, poor environment. So there are indicator species, and so we had literally tennis ball sized globs of them. I mean, there were millions of them that we found after that. So it goes up and down depending on what we do. Now, in a longer winter when there's a lot of salt that they put on the roads, that runs off, and that actually does test out as a heavy metal. So that, that's always higher in the spring, and it dissipates. But a marsh acts as a giant filter for the water, and the water that does make it out of the marsh is cleaner. So, and we can prove that by different tests that we do.
Okay, that's fascinating, and that's something that we really need to take care of. I shudder to think of a horrible accident on 35W where an oil tanker truck or something would. Does that ever cause you nightmares?
I'm not a big worrier.
Okay,
because what good does that do?
No, it's not going to prevent
I think I'll just sit up and
But it
watch
is something that could really make a difference.
And there are processes for dealing with those kinds of spills. There are booms that you bring in and that absorb it.
And so you guys are kind of geared
so
up to...
There are emergency procedures that you can put in place. But fortunately, what we have is a series of perimeter ponds that were dredged in the 90s. And those would actually contain, it wouldn't make it into the main marsh. So that's why I'm not concerned about it.
So the wildlife is somewhat protected by the border. Okay. So let's see, there's a number of trails in the...
We have 3 miles of trails and about that many of ski trails. So
I was going to ask you, do all of them almost get converted to ski?
No, we always keep a walking trail separate from the ski trail. And we have maps when people come in. We have a short loop trail, which is less than a quarter of a mile, and then we have about a mile and 8/10 of a trail that goes around the whole marsh.
Yeah, and the shorter one crosses. It can actually walk through it. I mean, there's a little what is it called, floating bridge.
We have a floating bridge. We don't ski on that.
No, you don't.
That's not real safe. But the floating bridge is always a challenge because it's something that's wood and in the water. You're always we're always looking at repairing it. But it is our main feature because you get into this environment called the marsh, which is really a vital place to be.
And listen to the blackboards. Actually, you see them because they're right there. It's winter time, it's cold. Does the lake freeze all the way to the bottom?
No.
It doesn't?
Well, it depends. In some places, it depends if it froze when it was a very low time of year. But the marsh is typically 3 to 4 feet deep. And, in a real hard winter, we'll get 13 inches of ice. So
Okay.
there is a
So
space.
basically.
There's a space there. Mhm.
So some of is there fish in there?
Well,
Not-
we do get bullheads, and they're
Oh,
usually a
bullheads.
die-off because there's not enough oxygen for them. You know,
Okay.
a marsh just doesn't have enough dissolved oxygen to support fish.
Okay.
But we'll occasionally get one of our invasive species now we have is goldfish. We have to tell all of the people that have fish, please don't dump it in your local marsh, because one day I was at Richfield Lake, which is our adjoining little marsh, and I looked down and go, I'm seeing orange fish in the lake and black fish, and they're related to koi, and they will get as big as you let them get, you know, these really big koi fish. And so it is an invasive species. So we do have those, and they are from Asia, where it's cold, so they can handle the winter. So you know, the best thing would be to get an invasive species that's from a tropical area, because they'll
They'll
go
die.
off. Yeah. But so that is a fish that we do see, and we occasionally get some sunfish. But because, again, it's just not enough dissolved oxygen or moving water to get enough oxygen for the bigger fish. We have minnows, fathead minnows. We have stickleback minnows is our more common minnow, and they help the food chain. You know, the turtles eat them, and the raccoons eat them, and it's an important part of the food chain.
So we need to tell people, if you've got Asian fish of any sort, or
Don't
especially goldfish and koi,
Anything,
don't
even a
put it
turtle.
in the-
A lot of people think, you know, a red-eared slider looks a lot like a painted turtle. I could just release it, can I? No, it's from Missouri. We don't want it, you know.
We don't.
Nature's very delicate that way. And a species that is, whether it be a plant or an animal, a reptile, you know, a species that's not common to the area, either will die off because it isn't adapted, or it will take over and cause havoc that way.
and kill a lot of
Or
our...
inbreed, or, you know, something. Yeah, it just, nature's worked out this long, long evolutionary history of balance, and we're really good at interrupting that. Often intentional, not intentionally, so.
Yeah, and so, oh, that's good. So residents, do not put your goldfish
Please, yeah.
in the, and really any lake, not just Wood Lake, any
Absolutely.
Minnesota lake.
I mean, you know, some people will say, you know, I have a painted turtle, can I release it here? I'd say, sure, that's okay. That's not a species that, you know, reproduces quickly. Or other people say, can I release my squirrel here? I go, that would be no. Just counted 17 on our feeders. We're fine on squirrels,
we
thank
have
you.
plenty of
The
squirrels.
coyotes are not killing enough of them, you know.
Well, that's interesting. It's wintertime, and we have one of the more top-of-the-line predators in Minnesota in our own backyard.
We do.
How many?
The coyotes are feeling very comfortable in the Midwest. It used to be very common to see them in the West, but they have moved eastward. We haven't seen them lately at Wood Lake, but we know they're there for their tracks and so on.
So they are.
Yeah.
And there used to be fox. Are they still there?
The fox have been displaced by the
The
coyotes.
coyotes?
Yeah. Once in a while we'll see one come through, but because they smell a larger predator, they stay away.
Oh.
And the coyotes will prey on their kids.
You're young.
Yeah.
Okay. And the coyotes are eating whatever, squirrels, rabbits, raccoons.
Right, and small dogs and cats. And so that's what we really have to tell residents, to please keep an eye on your cats and small dogs, because they don't climb trees. And, you know, I've actually seen a coyote eat 3 or 4 squirrels right outside my window. It's amazing how fast they are. The squirrel will try to say, oh, you know, I can make it over to that tree. No, they can't. They'll get them midair. But a squirrel's much harder to catch than something that's innocent and barking at them.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
so it's real important. It's
people.
really sad when you lose a pet to a coyote.
Have they been seen just in the residential areas?
Sure.
They
They
have
are.
been.
Yeah, they are. It's real important that coyotes, as well as almost all wild animals, are afraid of humans naturally. We're bigger than they are. We're not their food. We don't smell like their food. They're not interested in us. And so just our presence makes them run away. If we start feeding them, big no-no. And if we don't act threatening, in other words, if we go, oh, cool, a coyote, and we don't go, you know, haze them and say, get out of here, then they will go, oh, well, I can just go after their dog, and so we do want coyotes to remain afraid of us, so that we have a line of defense in the case when, you know, they will not go after your dog if you're with your dog.
Right.
And so it's real important to keep them afraid of us, and never leave food out for them. No, and especially like some people will leave their dog scraps or dog food out for them. Bird seed should always be kept in a locked garage. You know, that kind of thing. Just not, and which is good for raccoons and other things that can cause a problem.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the only thing
Right.
in raiding our trash heaps. So if, you know, somebody said, well, you know, what should I do if I see one in my backyard? And I said, jumping up and down and scream, well, maybe not scream because somebody might think you're being attacked, but
Right.
If you got, you know, clap your hands really loud, or if you have a pan real close by, bang it.
Well, if you see a coyote just walking through your yard, just enjoy it. But if it's stalking something,
like a dog,
yeah, if it's coming back over and over again, kind of eyeing your dog, that's when you want to start hazing it. I mean, if it's, you know, if you've got a lot of rabbits in your yard you don't want, and it's stalking rabbits, I'd say, come on back. You know?
Yes.
Especially if you're a gardener and a lover of garden plants. But I mean, it's a matter of, you don't want them to get habituated to backyards. And in Richfield, we have some, especially right bordering Wood Lake, we do have a lot of yards that are very coyote friendly. They offer a lot of shelter. And there are some things you can do to your yard to make them less coyote friendly. You're not, you know, trim back bushes and not make some, you know, habitat so good for them.
To have a screen.
They like to, you know, to be, you know, places to hide. They also like to den in brush piles, things like that. You can, you know, get rid of brush piles and not make it so.
I know people that live on the south side of Wood Lake, and they talk about hearing the coyotes
often when the sirens go off.
Sing to the moon.
Yeah, well, the sirens go off. They sing to the sirens.
Oh, they sing to sirens. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose that makes sense.
Yeah, they just hear the sirens and they just start. I'm not going to do my coyote invitation here, but they do start howling at them, which is kind of funny.
So we've already talked. The rabbits are active. The squirrels are active. Although squirrels will hibernate or deep sleep or for a while.
Not squirrels. Any animal that when it's super cold, if they have a cache of food, they'll just kind of hunker down and eat their cache of food while they're, you know, waiting out the weather. Because there's always a ratio of, do you get out and burn up calories while you're looking for food, or do you just stay hunkered down and burn off the fat you've stored? So that'll happen. But there's very, very few animals really that truly hibernate in this area. Okay. The groundhog being one.
The what?
Groundhog being one.
Oh,
or woodchuck, which is the more common term.
Do we have any of those?
Sure, we have them.
We do.
Yep, absolutely. They're just fossorial, which means they're underground, so we don't really notice them too much. A lot of people see them and go, "Oh, it's a beaver," because that's what people think. It's related, but it doesn't have the flat tail. It has a bushy tail, and a very important animal actually, because they're such good burrowers, and they actually create habitat for other denning animals like fox and skunks and things like that. So they're kind of a key species. They're kind of like the woodpeckers that, like, what would birds do that need a cavity nested without woodpeckers? That's such an important, I was always so surprised that there are no woodpeckers in Australia and there are cavity nesting birds there. I'm like, how does that work? You know, they have to wait for it to rot out and have the parrots and so on get in there. So there are some species that don't, from a human perspective, if you don't realize, you go, oh, what's the value of that? Well, if they're digging habitat, they're creating it for a lot of other species.
So, okay, we got the squirrels, we've got the rabbits and raccoons. I don't see those so much out in the dumpsters and whatnot. Maybe I just haven't been out enough at night.
We really have, because of the stormwater pipes, we really do have a great deal of raccoons.
We do.
And, you know, they are territorial, and they are, so what was happening, I remember years ago, there was a humane society up north that what their policy was to if they got in a raccoon that was injured or orphaned, they would take care of it, and then they just release it in their backyard. And I'm thinking, wow, you really created a problem there, because the males will be they'll get in fights to the death, a territory fight. So it's really important in any wildlife decision to know the full story of the wildlife, not only of their natural history, but of how they fit into the bigger picture. And people say, oh, raccoons are so cute, or raccoons are so evil, or they carry all these things that people think. And the big picture is you want every animal to be in balance. And when raccoons get out of balance, well, they dig up turtle eggs. It's one of their favorite things. They can smell, here's a turtle just, laying her eggs, and here comes a raccoon the next day. The nest is gone. It's gone because it's one of their favorite foods, and they can smell them. Well, that's okay unless you have an overpopulation of raccoons, and then you're going to have an underpopulation of turtles or ducks or the things. So again, it's about balance. And so it's real important to understand. That's what I find so fascinating about nature, is that every single animal has a different story that it lives with.
So to a certain extent, because they are territorial, there probably is only going to be X amount of raccoons right at the lake in a kind of a balanced situation. Right. And then the others are going to have to try to fit in and live throughout the city.
And that's why you see so many roadkills of raccoons, is because they're trying to cross streets, trying to get to a territory where there's room for them.
Okay.
And you don't see otters being roadkilled because there aren't an overpopulation of otters or mink, but you do see raccoons and squirrels.
So we got raccoons. What other, what I would call medium-sized mammals do we have at the Nature Center?
Well, we do have weasels and minks.
Oh, we do have
and
weasels.
Chipmunks.
Yeah, chipmunks, I'm sure.
We just actually released a flying squirrel, a southern flying squirrel. They are very nocturnal squirrels, one of the 3 species of squirrels we have at the Nature Center. And they are one of my favorites. They're just, have these really big eyes because they're nocturnal and they need to see at night. And they have a little piece of skin that attaches their front and back leg. And they don't actually fly, of course, because only bats are the only mammal that truly flies that can go up, but they can glide down. And people found them in their walls. They heard this scratchy noise, and they found one, and we're all concerned about it. But we released it.
So that
Nature Center.
one can survive in Minnesota.
Absolutely, it's part of.
Is it native to
Yep,
Minnesota?
it's native.
Oh, it is also native.
It's called the southern flying squirrel. And they're just little guys. They're really small,
cute.
but they're often hard to find. They do like to be in cavities. They're very nocturnal, and they will cache food. So it's kind of neat.
Birds, no, we've got the chickadees and some of those, but red-winged blackbirds head south.
Yep. Anything that has a food source that cannot be sustained in the winter. Well, now you can get some overwintering red-winged blackbirds because they can eat seeds.
Oh, so people are feeding them.
Or people are feeding them. But typically they do, and they don't go too far south because they don't need tropics. They just need, being able to. And so, but we have the chickadees that stay year-round, the cardinals that stay year-round, we have the blue jays that stay year-round. We have all the woodpeckers. We have red-bellied that have gone up in numbers since Wood Lake's been keeping track of birds since 1974. And the species of woodpecker that's gone up has been the red-bellied woodpecker, which has a kind of a red, kind of a crown, not a crest, but a crown. And that's gone up in numbers. The red-headed woodpecker's gone way down in numbers, and they're doing a lot of research as to why that is. It's a beautiful, beautiful bird. The red-headed woodpecker project now going on at in the university property up in East Bethel area, the Cedar area, is finding out that the red-headed woodpecker needs about 4 chambers in a tree. That it's kind of okay. I'm going to store food here. I'm going to have my babies here. It's almost like they need a mansion. Yeah. And without that habitat, they
and with people constantly clearing out groves, I mean, if a tree goes down, they right away get rid of it, or if a tree dies, they get rid of it.
This is why the wood ducks were almost extinct in the 40s, because they nested in cavities, and somebody figured out, oh, what if we build boxes that have just the perfect size hole, do you think they'd use them? And that was hugely successful, a conservation movement, to get them to be a species that's actually, you know, they do sell licenses to hunt them. They're very, very, that's a great success story. It's a beautiful, beautiful duck. So there's two kinds of nests that they make outside and nests that they make in the holes. So cavity nesters you can actually save if they run into problems. And even the hooded merganser, which is a small diving duck, wood ducks are puddle ducks, but diving ducks, the hooded mergansers will use a wood duck. And we actually have them nesting at Wood Lake now, which is kind of fun.
I thought I saw one last summer. So. And the bluebirds, I should say. I know that you have bluebird houses.
We do have bluebird houses. They are challenging to get in the city because they have competition from tree swallows, which are a little more prolific, and they also sparrows take over their nests. The English sparrows, which really aren't sparrows at all. They're weaver finches, and were brought over in the 1800s by pioneers who thought it would just be so nice to bring over a little bird for company. They really wanted to not miss their native birds, and that has been a major, major invasive species because sparrows are so they're so aggressive.
Yeah.
They get along in this climate very, very well. I think I counted over 70 at Wood Lake's feeders the other day, and yeah, they are problematic.
They're one of our invasive species.
They sure are, along with starling.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about programming in the wintertime. And of course, as you said earlier, before we went on the air, that depends on the weather, but talk about what's going on in terms of programming. Outside first, and then we'll move inside.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's really fun to do in the wintertime is tracking, is learning the tracks. And you know, when there's just a little bit of snow on the ground, which is what we've had, it's really fun to go out and do tracks. We also make molds, plaster molds of tracks. And that's a really fun program to learn about. Because the first thing I say when I teach the class is, where are you on the planet? Because there's no way we're going to see a zebra track today. And there's no way we're going to see a lion track today. There's no way we're going to see a moose track today because of where we are. Southern Minnesota, no moose. Don't worry. If you see it's not going to be a mule deer, they don't live in Minnesota. So you don't have to get out your book and say, is that a moose or is that a deer? It's a white-tailed deer. That's it, you know. And so that's a fun class to teach. We also teach a class for the younger kids called Muskrat Safari. And what we do is we talk about the adaptations of a muskrat, which is amazing because they swim in this weather. They swim, and they're very well adapted to swimming underwater. The water's got to be about, what, 35 degrees? And they never get wet. Their coat is like having a dry suit on. And they have guard hairs, and they have what's called nictitating membranes, kind of a permanent goggle that goes in. So they are active in the winter underwater. And so what we do in the class is we count muskrat dens, and we say, all right, in this den or lodge, there's an average of 5 muskrats in the winter. So let's count and so we all go out and we count dens, and we stand on the dens and show how strong they are, because you could stand on them, they're that strong, made from this little rodent that's, you know, maybe a fourth of the size of a beaver, and out of mud and cattails. And I always tell the kids, I said, if you gave me your credit card and I went to one of the hardware stores and I bought nails and hammer and all, I couldn't make anything that would support the whole class, but they could. So they're quite industrious. Beavers get the reputation of being industrious.
Yeah, we hear about beavers.
They are quite amazing themselves. So we actually do a safari where we teach kids about how you estimate the number of animals. So if there's 5 per, and you find 10, of course there's 50. But then we multiply it by the whole marsh, because we can't, of course, get to the whole marsh. And usually we do a third of the marsh, so then we multiply times 3. And this year we through our estimates, figured there were almost 400 muskrats in Wood Lake this year, which is quite high.
Oh my goodness.
Which means my trails are in huge trouble. They love to tunnel underneath the trails. If you ever see a hole in the trail, you can blame a muskrat. They're usually the culprit.
Oh, really? Because they're tunneling, and
right.
then the
They're
soil collapses.
wonderful tunnelers.
Well, how are they getting into the water? Under their home? Does it stay?
Under their homes, they have a hole. In fact, I found this one the other day. We take the people actually onto the Cattail Islands when we know the marsh is frozen. We auger the ice and make sure it's deep enough. At any rate, we've got I had a huge muskrat den in the middle of the island, which means that tunnel is pretty deep and pretty amazing, because you've got to keep it from freezing shut. You got to use it all the time so it doesn't freeze up.
Oh my goodness, I did not realize that. I mean,
they're
I grew up at a farm, and there was some wetlands, and I knew about muskrats, but I had no idea that they kept swimming under the water in the wintertime.
They do. They do. It seems like hibernation would be such a much better strategy, but apparently it is just not as successful.
So mom and pop and a couple of kids are what's in the 5?
Yep. And
Okay.
and they can eat just about anything. They can eat snails. They can eat small bugs and things, but they typically eat plant roots. Sweet flag is one of their favorites. Okay. It's one of the cattail roots, that kind of thing.
Now, if we had more snow, we'd be skiing, cross-country skiing.
Oh, please, please let us have more snow. People, every phone call, no, we can't do it yet. I always said if Wood Lake wins the lottery, I'm getting snowmaking machines.
Machine to do the skiing.
And I'm flipping them on every day from October to April to make our skiers happy. That would be so nice.
Well, it's so close to a lot of people. I mean, the whole area, there isn't a ski trail until you get to Highland. And maybe the lakes, Minnehaha Creek. So that's
people
a
like
whole
it because
big
it's
area.
flat, it's close by, it's easy, it's never that crowded, and it's a fun thing. We enjoy it. It's really fun to have people come out, and families come out. And we do outfit 4-year-olds to
all the way up.
All the way up. Yep.
And then snowshoeing is big, and you actually teach people how to build their own snowshoes.
Yep. We have snowshoe making classes in November, and we rent the kind that are not real hard to maintain, the ones that are the metal kind. But it's really a nice way to get out. You just see people who after being outside and refreshed and they get, we're just not meant to sit as much as we sit. We're really meant to be active. And I'm sorry, walking in malls, to me, it just isn't the same.
Well, and also, that's a health benefit. At least, your face is probably not covered. And you're getting some sunshine on a sunny day and some good vitamin D.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just, I think we're just meant to move, and I know I am.
Well, yeah, it's true. And then the other big part of Wood Lake is the kids in school. And you doing classes for them all year round?
Yes, we do classes all year round, and we set that up in August. We get all the Richfield public schools in, and we also teach the Blessed Trinity system, the local Catholic school. We have K through 8, and we really enjoy knowing that the local kids are being served by the Nature Center. And then we have homeschool groups that are on our regular schedule. And then we also have daycares that come out with their kids. I just signed up 75 kids to come out and do a day at Wood Lake during the Richfield school vacation. We also have other schools. This is my belief, is that every city should have a nature center. Don't need a ton of room. We have 150 acres. But what's really important to me is that we just can't service everybody like that. Excuse me.
Yes. It used to be when Minneapolis was smaller, the kids could get on the streetcar, and at the end of the line, they'd be pretty darn close to the country. That's not possible anymore, and I worry about these kids that grew up in the center area and never really get out to nature until they're adults.
That's so true. Well, there's a book out called The Last Child in the Woods.
Oh, I heard a review.
About that.
Talk about that.
Dr. Richard Love, who I took a class from him actually, and his theory is called nature deficit disorder, was that we're really hardwired to be outdoors, engaged in a 3-dimensional world where our brain interacts in a three-dimensional world, and we get to make choices and decisions that have consequences. And when we don't play like that, when we don't lift sticks and we don't do that kind of thing, what happens is our brains don't develop properly. And the disorder is attention deficit disorder, kids who can't sit still. There's no outlet, there's no release. And there's some really good research to support that. They're saying that kids don't even break arms anymore because no one's letting them climb trees because the lawyers are in charge, but they do get repetitive stress injuries from their thumbs by texting and all the things that they do. And so we really, at Wood Lake, what we did is we developed something called the Nature Play Area, which is a fenced-in area with 2 benches that parents can watch their kids play. And the rule is no metal, no plastic, just rocks, sand, sticks. And it's just fun to go by there and see what kids have built lately. It's really fun to do that. So I'm really, really pleased that we have that area. I think it's a very important thing that kids are allowed to do that. And then in the summer, we have classes, and one of our most popular ones is called Fantastic Forts. And we let kids build forts for the week.
Oh,
and just, because I don't know about you, but I built a fort when I was a kid.
I did too.
Yeah, and not only that, but my parents would be arrested today for the parenting they did. It was like they had a bell, and it was like lunchtime. They didn't know where we were. Can you imagine a parent today that doesn't know where their kid is?
Yeah.
Oh, they would be held up on charges,
Yeah.
child endangerment. It was like, what a wonderful way to, and I grew up in the suburb of Golden Valley, so what a wonderful way to grow up. We were so fortunate that there wasn't stranger danger back then, that you really, weren't a bad parent.
And everybody parented. If the kids happened to be in your yard, you were the parent for that time. If Johnny wasn't behaving, you told him to shut up.
And parents were home, moms were home typically, and that was it was a different time. But one of the things I realized, you can't just teach about nature with having kids behind you on a trail. They have to be on their own, making their own choices. You can't believe the kids will come up and have like a stick this big and try to bridge a gap this big, and they just can't figure out what's going on. And I look at them, and and they don't really, that spatial relation thing is something you have to learn and you have to experience. And so experiential education is really what we're about, Maureen, and it's so much fun to see that at least 3 times a year with Richfield kids.
I was going to ask you how.
Fall, and spring, fall, winter, we have classes for them. And then in the summer, we offer classes that they pay for. Those are camps. And it's always bothered me that not every Richfield kid, or that our camps are not serving the population the way our school year does. Our school year, we offer that free to the public schools. There's a nominal fee for the private schools, and then there is the summer camps, which is kind of our cash cow. We have to depend on so much revenue, and I don't like that to be the hurdle at $50 for a 3-day morning camp and $80 for a week-long 5-day camp. I don't like that to be the barrier for the Richfield kids for coming. After all, we're a Richfield, City of Richfield, the Recreational Services Department thing. So we just are so excited to announce the Emily Day Scholarship Fund for Richfield Public School kids who live in Richfield, are on the free and reduced lunch program, and can get transportation. We have enough funding now for with a couple different sources, mainly from the Richfield Foundation. I make sure I say that. Thank you, Richfield Foundation. We appreciate it.
Yes, they do good things.
Yeah, they do. And we have about $2,500 in the fund, which is about, depending whether it's 3-day, about 36 to 40 kids will be able to come to camp this summer. All the principals.
Who wouldn't otherwise be able to.
And I'm hoping the transportation isn't a barrier. Really couldn't really work that out. But all of the principals and the superintendent of the Richfield Public Schools now have their applications in their hands, and I'm real excited that we can get that. So we'll continue to fund it. We're not sure we'll use up all the funding this year. We'll just continue to grow that fund, and it's named after such a lovely, lovely woman who's 101 right now, Emily Day, and who's a dear friend of mine, and
a League of Women Voters for
absolutely.
about as long as, probably longer than you have been here.
Yes, exactly. And she was on our board, Friends of Wood Lake Board.
Yeah, until she was, what, 97?
Something like that, yeah. She was on there for 21 years, and just a dear heart. So that we also have a shelter named after her, a picnic shelter that we got the money raised for the Emerson. When the Emerson Lakes Church closed, we applied for a grant for that and got most of it funded that way. And so we're going to have a shelter at Wood Lake that we can do a lot of programming into. So I'm excited about this year.
Oh,
It will be a lot of fun.
Now, if people, I mean, I can't think of anything better than giving money to, so that a child whose parents could never afford it otherwise could spend 3, 4, 5 days in a, you know, learning about nature. If people want to make a direct contribution to the
612-861-9365. Just give me a call. Absolutely.
or just drop off a check.
Drop off a check, call by phone.
Envelope marked for
We take all payments, yes. And you can even dedicate it in the name of someone. We could certainly send somebody a letter, and it's all tax deductible. Sure, absolutely. And it's really another way of giving back to the community and making sure that kids aren't afraid of nature. You can't believe how many kids are just so, we develop fears about what we don't experience. And it's amazing, even the adults, you know, who just will get hysterical over things that are just really not worthy of that kind of emotional reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I know people would probably laugh, but I read Charlotte's Web to my kids. That's the first time I read it. And to this day, I really have a problem taking down spider webs, especially if I see there's
Well, they make them every day, so you can take them down.
I
It's
can
okay.
take them
It's important to know. Remember I said, know the natural history. They don't want them anymore. I said that to my husband who's got cobwebs over his desk. You know, honey, you can take them down. You're not going to hurt, because you
good. I feel much better.
You can't kill a spider in our house. No way.
If I don't see the spider, he's probably not interested in that web anymore, so I can take it.
That's
Good.
right. Absolutely not a
Because,
problem.
you know, people don't realize, you know, everything from spiders to little animals, and dragonflies, for example, are getting rid of pesky insects that, at the minimum, bother us, like mosquitoes. But, you know, these animals are our friends.
Well, you know, what's really important to know is, again, the balance. We have, for example, when people say, we got to get rid of mosquitoes, we had remember Governor Perpich? That was one of the things he said, I'm going to rid Minnesota of mosquitoes. I'm like, no, we need them. They pollinate blueberries. How many people know that the male mosquitoes pollinate blueberries? Yeah, those little tiny flowers on blueberries, they're an important part of their pollination. That they're, as larvae, they feed fish, which feed ducks. And if you look at lakes that have the briquettes in them that you know you put in to treat a pond from mosquitoes, and you find that they don't allow them to metamorphosize, but they're also attacking crane flies and mayflies and all kinds of things that are not harmful to humans. And you know, so they're non-specific insecticides, and they're disruptors of lots of things. So, you know, I tell people to learn, you know, how to appreciate the value of everything, you know. And I tell girls particularly, please don't scream when you see a bug. You know how hard it is for women to get credibility as scientists, even today? It's when you go, ew, it's a spider. And like, oh, that doesn't make you look like you're going to be a scientist, does it?
Yes. I have often wondered about that. I never quite figured out what screaming really accomplished when you saw
it. Made boys feel powerful.
Oh, that was it.
That was it. Like, you know.
I guess I wasn't into that because I never could figure it out when they'd scream. But yeah, and it's for people that have never walked through Wood Lake, please do. I mean, if you live in Richfield, you're not that far away. But even other areas, it's beautiful.
Well, thank you. We work hard to try to keep it natural and keep it safe and keep it vital. You know, I think that the biggest challenge is to keep people in balance with the natural environment. It's really, sometimes people just go, can I cross-country ski across the marsh? No, because we have to save some habitat for them.
For them.
And it's not safe for the skier as well. But I mean, it's that kind of thing where we really struggle with keeping the buckthorn at bay. That's a horribly invasive tree that was brought over actually as a laxative. It works tremendously well as a laxative for the berries.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
I ate berries once. Somebody told me they were choke cherries.
Yes.
They were not choke cherries.
No, they aren't, and they will cause you many hours in the restroom.
Yeah.
But they work for bears when they get out of hibernation. They want to clean themselves out. But unfortunately, the birds eat them, robins particularly, and they spread them out when they defecate over areas. And the problem with an invasive tree is really about what it doesn't grow very tall, and it has a chemical in the root system. They have very fine root hairs that doesn't allow a native maple or a native oak tree to grow. So that's how they take over. It's called allelopathy, and that means that a squirrel might bury a seed, and in the right conditions it will sprout, but it won't sprout in those conditions because it's got this chemical retardant, as it were. And then what happens, so big deal. If you don't have maple trees, you don't have maple seeds. If you don't have maple seeds, you don't have food for squirrels. If you don't have tall trees, you don't have habitat for owls and eagles and things that need tall, big, sturdy trees. So that's the ramifications of this. So we work hard to try to get actually we have the 5th graders in Richfield pull them under the guise that it's educational. One of these days someone's going to get me for slave labor of children, and I'll be in prison for that. Yep.
Well, now I know who to blame, because I had buckthorn when I moved into my current residence, and I pulled it all. But it keeps coming back, but it's the darn squirrels that are probably, or robins or anything.
Yeah, they come in with the berries, and also if you don't get out the entire root, it will sprout back. You can't just clip it.
So I know, yeah, you have the 5th graders. I know in spring, don't you have a day where people can come and pull buckthorn?
Often we have a buckthorn busting day that we can do that. But anytime anyone wants to pull buckthorn, I will give you carte blanche to use our stuff. Sign on the dotted line and don't sue me if you injure yourself, and go at it. It takes about 5 minutes to teach you how to identify a buckthorn.
Okay. Let's see. Well, all the ducks are gone, so there's none of those around. The geese come through just on their migration. We don't really have any geese wintering in
geese, not at Wood Lake, but geese will winter as well as mallards where there's open water.
When there's open water.
So like Penn Lake, I think, keeps open some open water.
Yeah.
I think General Mills has a pond where they keep it open. So that is why you will see them around the area. I saw some ducks flying today.
Okay. And deer. Now I know what was it, about 10, 15 years ago, we had just a deer infestation, for want of a better word, and we had to trap and get rid of them. How are we with the deer now?
Well, this year we're going to actually just about to do our count, but we're a little afraid that we'll have to do a culling, and that's because deer, we have to get this message out. In the winter, will eat 8 to 10 pounds of tree buds per day per deer. So if you go over about 3 deer at Wood Lake, remember we're 150 acres, 70 acres of that are a marsh, so we've got that periphery. So we have this delicate balance of trees that we want to keep growing. Well, deer are like lawnmowers for trees. They just mow them down. And if they overwinter in the Wood Lake, we haven't had them overwinter. They seem to be doing that now. So we do have to control them, unless people don't want trees. I mean, that's the choice.
And I think Richfield people do have a tendency to get upset.
I always tell people I'm a vegan and a vegetarian, but I do sanction the control of deer just because we have to look out for the plants.
And we don't have the top predators.
Right. Actually, coyotes have been seen to take down deer, even full-grown deer. So
Oh, really?
Yes, yes. That is
I thought maybe the fawns,
but
definitely.
there is some video of them actually going after in kind of a pack formation. So we were acting more. Wolves are really their #1 predator, but so far we haven't seen that at Wood Lake.
Happening at
Yeah.
the lakes. So instead we've got deer. And that's another thing. People should not be feeding the deer.
No,
There's-
it's really, you know, when people get involved in that level, and I mean, you can feed birds, but not hand feed anything. In fact, there's a wildlife ordinance not to hand feed any wildlife in Richfield. And hand feeding means, you know, here, ducky, ducky, that kind of thing. And what you do is when you do that is you alter their environment. They know how many babies to have based on the food they find. And when you're offering them food, their populations grow, and you all of a sudden people, oh, there's, you know, people get very frustrated with the overpopulation of geese because they're messing up the trails and things like that. So it's often human, and people feel that. I had an aunt once who said, "There's white bread in the refrigerator. Go feed the seagulls." And I'm like, why would I want to do that? White bread's terrible for everything, especially it swells up in their gut. They think they're full and they're not getting any nutrition. You know, white bread, bad invention for everybody.
Everyone, included humans.
So, but you know, my grandfather, may he rest in peace, was loved to feed the pigeons, and he would go down to the park, and that was his engagements with nature. And so, you know, I do understand that motivation, and you know, to say don't feed the pigeons to an old person who can't hike in the woods anymore, or hike in the mountains and connect to nature and have that spiritual connection, you know, is really a tough one. It's a tough call. So, but if you think you're doing it because you're doing the wildlife a favor, you're not.
No, you're not. Okay. There's got to be more things. I know maple syrup will come up. We're tapping maple trees. What, February, March is the time?
You know, and that's the thing with, now they're calling it ACD. Have you heard of that?
No, I'm old-fashioned.
Anthropogenic climate disruption instead of climate change. So anthropocentric, which means that it's human-generated climate disruption. And I like the word disruption better than change. Change is good. You want to change that baby diaper, you want to change, you know, change is good, right? Climate warming, God, bring it on, you know. But disruption, that sounds bad, and that is bad. And what they've done, and you like Mayan culture, Maya research. One of my really good friends is a form of researcher of Mayan civilization, and what she discovered was their civilization was rising when the climate was the most stable. And what do we have now? We have this. We have climate going up and down,
all over the
which
place.
brings us to the trees. Maple syrup can only be made when the sap is running, and the sap is only going to run when it's 32 degrees above during the day and below 32 at night. That causes the pumping of the xylem and the phloem. So xylem up, phloem down, and you tap into the xylem on those days if you have the right temperatures. Well, what if we don't get that temperature? What if it warms up too fast? Then you have a very short season.
So that's what the problem is. It really is a crucial window in there.
It's a crucial window. You have to be ready. And when someone says to me, when is maple sapping season? I don't know anymore. And that's frightening because it used to be mid-February to mid-March was key, but sometimes it could be early February, sometimes it could be very late. And you have to be kind of ready to catch it when you can.
It happens. And, yeah, because I've seen the little spout things into the maple trees at Wood Lake. We've got about 5 minutes. Anything else you want to say about this jewel?
I really want to promote people to join the Friends of Wood Lake.
Oh, yes. Talk about family membership.
Yeah, the family membership is really the best deal in town. It's been $50 for family for years and years. And during the course of a year, you get free skiing, free snowshoeing, 10% off on all birthday parties, 10% off on all classes, 10% off on all merchandise, free Sunday specials. You get a free animal show in February and March that's coming up. You get just the knowledge that you're supporting the Nature Center, and it's really, really fun to have people come out and say, I'm a member, I want to go skiing, I'm a member, I want to. This last Sunday special was called Tracks and S'mores, and I taught that, and I think out of 23 people, 20 of them were all members, so they were taking advantage of that, which is really, really nice. And then we have our fundraiser that's coming up this year on April 24th at the Minnesota Valley Golf Club in Bloomington, and it's a lovely spot. Audubon certified, so I help work on that as a
the golf course is Audubon.
Yep, the golf course is Audubon certified. And we are having Ellen Toppeshofer. She's a bee expert, and a lot of people are concerned about what's happening with our bees, and she's going to be talking about that. And we're also going to have Bobby Jensen, who is on the garden show that he does on KARE 11, and he's our MC. So it's all going to be, people who are interested in what's going on with bees and gardening, I think they'll really be interested in that program this year. And that does help fund the programs at Wood Lake a great deal. It also gives us a presence in the city.
Yeah, I've been to it a number of times, and it's just a fun night. It's just really is.
And I get to get out of my jeans and wear a dress.
Yeah,
so that's
people
fun
get
too.
to dress up a little bit.
People get to dress up a little bit.
It's kind of nice.
It is fun.
From time to time.
It is fun.
We don't do that quite as much anymore. Not when people are going in jeans to plays, and it's not dressing up so much anymore. Well, I tell you, I just can't say how much you have meant to the city and to that nature center. To my audience, Karen has really, really put Wood Lake Nature Center on the map, I think, all over Minnesota for sure, and maybe certainly the Midwest region. And
well, thank you. I say I've been fooling him for 24 years. So.
Maybe that's it. Been around for a long time.
Been
Obviously,
around for a long
people
time.
get to know you. Oh, and just very quickly, maybe we got a minute. Oh, but you also are an author, and you have 2 books, and in 30 seconds, just say the title.
Oh, I have about 13 books, but 3 of them are called Nature's Yucky, Gross Stuff That Helps Nature Work. And if you buy them at the Nature Center, the proceeds do go to Friends Wood Lake. So
yeah, and they're really cute for toddlers and preschoolers, I guess, would be the thing.
I got to do something in my spare time. I don't watch sports, so I got to write.
And so you get to write kids' books. Well, our time is up, and I want to thank you so much. I know you're a very busy person, so on behalf of the League of Women Voters, thank you for being with us tonight. And to my audience, thank you and good night.